Chapter 45. The Book of Virtue, Enjoining Good Manners and Joining of the Ties of Kinship. Chapter 1. Being dutiful to one's parents, and which of them is more entitled to it. Abu Huraira reported that a person came to Allah's Messenger and said, "Who among the people is most deserving of a fine treatment from my hand?" He said, "Your mother." He again said, "Then who is the next one?" He said again, "It is your mother, who deserves the best treatment from you." He said, "Then who is next?" "Then who is the next one?" He, the Holy Prophet, said again, "It is your mother." He again said, "Then who?" Thereupon he said, "Then it is your father." In the hadith transmitted on the authority of Kutalba, there is no mention of the word "the people." Abu Huraira reported that a person said, "Allah's Messenger, who amongst the people is most deserving of my good treatment?" He said, "Your mother," again your mother, again your mother, then your father, then your nearest relatives, according to the order of nearness. Abu Huraira reported, a person came to Allah's Apostle. The rest of the hadith is the same as transmitted by Jarir, but with this addition: by your father you would get the information. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Ibn Shubruma with the same chain of transmitters, and the hadith transmitted on the authority of Wuhaib. There is a slight variation of wording. Same is the case with the hadith transmitted on the authority of Muhammad b. Tala, and the words are, "Who amongst the people deserves the best treatment from me?" Abdullah b. Ahmed reported that a person came to Allah's Apostle and sought permission to participate in jihad, whereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "Are you parents living?" He said, "Yes." Thereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "You should put in your best efforts in their service." This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Habib with the several chains of transmitters. Yazid b. Abu Habib reported that Naim, the freed slave of Salama, reported to him that Abdullah b. Amr b. As said, "There came to Allah's Apostle a person and said, 'I owe allegiance to you for migration and jihad, seeking reward only from Allah.' He, the Holy Prophet, said, 'Is one from amongst your parents living?' He said, 'Yes, of course, both are living.' He further asked, 'Do you want to seek reward from Allah?' He said, 'Yes.' Thereupon Allah's Messenger said, 'Go back to your parents and accord them benevolent treatment.'" Chapter 2. Being dutiful to one's parents takes precedence over voluntary prayer, etc. Abu Huraira reported that Jurayj was one who was devoted to prayer in the temple. His mother came to him. Humayd said that Abu Rafi demonstrated before us like the demonstration made by Abu Huraira, to whom Allah's Messenger had demonstrated, as his mother called him, placing her palms upon the eyebrows and lifting her head for calling him, and said, Juraj, it is your mother, so talk to her. She found him at that time absorbed in prayer, so he said to himself, O Lord, my mother is calling me, whereas I am absorbed in my prayer. He opted for prayer. She, his mother, went back, then came again. For the second time and said, O Juraj, it is your mother calling you, so talk to me. He said, O Allah, there is my mother also and my prayer, and opted for prayer. And he opted for prayer. She said, O Allah, this Juraj is my son. I pray to talk to him, but he refuses to talk to me. O Allah, don't bring death to him unless he has seen the prostitutes. Don't bring death to him unless he has seen the prostitutes. And had she invoked the curse upon him from the heart of her heart, he would have been involved in some turmoil. There was a shepherd living near by his temple, the temple where Juraj was engaged in prayer. It so happened that a woman of that village came there, and that shepherd committed fornication with her, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a child. It was said to her, Whose child is this? She said, He is the child of one who is living in this temple. So there came persons with hatchets and spades. They called Juraj. He was absorbed in prayer, and he did not talk to them, and they were about to demolish that temple that he saw them, and then came to them, and they said, Ask her, this woman, what she says. He smiled and then touched the head of the child and said, Who is your father? He, the child, said, My father is the shepherd of the sheep. And when they heard this, they said, We are prepared to rebuild with gold and silver what we have demolished from your temple. He said, No, rebuild it with clay as it had been before. He then went up to his room and absorbed himself in prayer. Abu Huraira reported Allah's apostle as saying, No spoke in the cradle, but only 3 persons, Christ, son of Mary, the second one, that the companion of Juraj. Juraj had got constructed a temple and confined himself in that. His mother came to him as he was busy in prayer and she said, Juraj, he said, My Lord, my mother is calling me while I am engaged in my prayer. He continued with the prayer. She returned and she came on the next day, and he was busy in prayer, and she said, Juraj, and he said, My Lord, my mother is calling me while I am engaged in prayer. And he continued with the prayer, and she went back, and then on the next day she again came, and he was busy in prayer, and she said, Juraj, and he said, My Lord, my mother is calling me while I am engaged in my prayer. And he continued with the prayer, and she said, My Lord, don't give him death unless he has seen the fate of the prostitutes. The story of Juraj and that of his meditation and prayer gained currency amongst Bani Israel. There was a prostitute who had been a beauty incarnate. She said to the people, If you like, I can allure him to evil. She presented herself to him, but he paid no heed to her. She came to a shepherd who lived near the temple, and she offered herself to him, and he had a sexual intercourse with her. And so she became pregnant, and when she gave birth to a child, she said, "This is from Juraj." So they came and asked him to get down and demolish the temple, and began to beat him. He said, "What is the matter?" They said, "You have committed fornication with this prostitute, and she has given birth to a child from your loins." He said, "Where is the child?" They brought him the child, and he said, "Just leave me, so that I should observe prayer." And he observed prayer, and when he finished, he came to the child. He struck his stomach and said, "Oh boy, who is your father?" Lai said, "He is such shepherd." So they turned towards Juraj, kissed him, and touched him for seeking blessing, and said, "We are prepared to construct your temple with gold." He said, "No, just rebuild it with mud, as it had been." And they did that. Then there was a babe who was suckling his mother, that a person dressed in fine garment came riding upon a beast. His mother said, "O Allah, make my child like this one." The babe, left suckling and began to see towards him, and said, "O Allah, don't make me like him." He then returned to the chest and began to suck the milk of his mother. Abu Hurairah said, "I perceived as if I am seeing Allah's Messenger, as he is explaining the scene of his suckling milk with his forefinger in his mouth and sucking that. Abu Hurairah further reported Allah's apostle, may be peace upon him, as saying, "There happened to pass by him a girl who was being beaten, and they were saying, you have committed adultery and you have committed theft." And she was saying, "Allah is enough for me, and he is my good protector." And his mother said, "O Allah, don't make my child like her." And he left sucking the milk. And looked towards her and said, "O Allah, make me like her." And there was a talk between them. She said, "O with shaven head, a good-looking person happened to pass by." And I said, "O Allah, make my child like him." And you said, "O Allah, don't make me like him." And they passed by a girl while they were beating her and saying, "You committed fornication and you committed theft." And I said, "O Allah, don't make my child like her." And you said, "O Allah, make me like her." Thereupon he said, "That person was a tyrant." And I said, "O Allah, don't make me like him." And they were saying about her, "You committed fornication," whereas in fact she had not committed that. And they were saying, "You have committed theft," whereas she had not committed theft. So I said, "O Allah, make me like her." Chapter 3. The disgrace of one whose parents, one or both of them, reach old age during his lifetime, and he does not enter paradise. Abu Hurairah reported Allah's apostle as saying, "Let him be humbled into dust. Let him be humbled into dust." It was said, "Allah's messenger, who is he?" He said, "He who sees either of his parents during their old age, or he sees both of them, but he does not enter paradise." Abu Hurairah reported Allah's messenger as saying, "Let him be humbled, let him be humbled." It was said, "Allah's messenger, who is he?" He said, "He who finds his parents in old age, either one or both of them, and does not enter paradise. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Let them be humbled thrice," and the rest of the hadith is the same. Chapter 4. The virtue of maintaining ties with the friends of one's father and mother, etc. Ibn Dinar reported that a desert Arab met Abdullah bin Umar on the way to Mecca. Abdullah greeted him and mounted him upon the donkey on which he had been riding and gave him the turban that he had on his head. Ibn Dinar further reported, "We said to him, Abdullah bin Umar, may Allah do good to you. These are desert Arabs, and they are satisfied even with meager things." Thereupon Abdullah said, "His father was loved dearly by Umar bin Khatib, and I heard Allah's Messenger as saying, the finest act of goodness on the part of a son is to treat kindly the loved ones of his father." Abdullah bin Umar reported Allah's Apostle as saying, "The finest act of goodness is that a person should treat kindly the loved ones of his father." Abdullah bin Dinar reported that when Abdullah bin Umar set out to Mecca, he kept a donkey with him, which he used as a diversion from the tedium of journey on the camel's back, and had a turban which he tied round his head. One day, as he was riding the donkey, a desert Arab happened to pass by him. He Abdullah bin Umar said, "Aren't you so and so?" He said, "Yes." He gave him his donkey and said, "Ride it and tie the turban round your head." Some of his companions said, "May Allah pardon you, you gave to this desert Arab the donkey on which you enjoyed ride for diversion, and the turban which you tied round your head." Thereupon he said, "Verily I heard Allah's Messenger as saying, the finest act of goodness is the kind treatment of a person to the loved ones of his father after his death, and the father of this person was a friend of Umar." Chapter 5. Meaning of righteousness and sin. Nawas bin Saman al-Ansari reported, "I asked Allah's Messenger about virtues and vice. He said, virtue is a kind disposition, and vice is what rankles in your heart, and that you disapprove that people should come to know of it." Nawas bin Saman reported, "I stayed with Allah's Messenger for 1 year. What obstructed me to migrate was nothing but persistent inquiries from him about Islam. It was a common observation that when any one of us migrated to Medina, he ceased to ask too many questions from Allah's Messenger, so I asked him about virtue and vice. Thereupon Allah's Messenger said, virtue is a kind disposition, and vice is what rankles in your mind, and that you disapprove of its being known to the people." Chapter 6. Upholding ties of kinship and the prohibition of severing them. Abu Huraira reported that Allah's Messenger said, "Verily Allah created the universe, and when he had finished that, ties of relationship came forward and said, this is the place for him who seeks refuge from severing of blood relationship." He said, "Yes, are you not satisfied that I should keep relationship with one who joins your ties of relationship, and sever it with one who severs your ties of relationship?" They, the ties of blood, said, "Certainly so." Thereupon he said, "Well, that is how things are for you." Allah's Messenger then said, "Recite if you like." But if you turn away, you are sure to make mischief in the land and cut off the ties of kinship. Those it is whom Allah has cursed. So He has made them deaf and blinded their eyes. Do they not reflect on the Quran, or are there locks on their hearts? Aisha reported Allah's Messenger as saying, the tie of kinship is suspended to the throne and says, he who unites me, Allah would unite him, and he who severed me, Allah would sever him. Jubair bin Mut'im reported on the authority of his father that Allah's Messenger said, the severer would not enter paradise. Ibn Umar said that Sufyan explained it as, one who severs the tie of kinship would not enter paradise. Jubair bin Mut'im reported that his father narrated to him that Allah's Messenger said, the severer of the tie of kinship would not get into paradise. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Sudi with the same chain of transmitters. Anas bin Malik reported, I heard Allah's Messenger as saying, he who is desirous that his means of sustenance should be expanded for him, or his age may be lengthened, should join the tie of relationship. Anas bin Malik reported that Allah's Messenger said, he who likes that his sustenance should be expanded and his age may be lengthened should join the tie of kinship. Abu Huraira reported that a person said, Allah's Messenger, I have relatives with whom I try to have close relationship, but they sever this relation. I treat them well, but they treat me ill. I am sweet to them, but they are harsh towards me. Upon this, the Holy Prophet said, if it is so, as you say, then you in fact throw hot ashes upon their faces, and there would always remain with you on behalf of Allah an angel to support you, who would keep you dominant over them, so long as you adhere to this path of righteousness. Chapter 7. The prohibition of mutual jealousy and hatred and turning away from one another. Anas bin Malik reported Allah's Messenger as saying, neither nurse mutual hatred nor jealousy nor enmity, and become as fellow brothers and servants of Allah. It is not lawful for a Muslim that he should keep his relations estranged with his brother beyond 3 days. Anas bin Malik reported Allah's Messenger as saying like this, this hadith has been narrated through another chain of transmitters. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Sudi with the same chain of transmitters with the addition of Ibn Uyayna, and the words are, do not cut off mutual relations. This hadith has been narrated through another chain of transmitters, and the hadith transmitted on the authority of Abd al-Razik, the words are, neither nurse grudge nor sever the ties of kinship, nor nurse enmity. Anas reported Allah's Apostle as saying, nurse no grudge, nurse no aversion, and do not sever ties of kinship, and live like fellow brothers and as servants of Allah. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Shuba with the same chain of transmitters, but with this addition, as Allah has commanded you. Chapter 8. The prohibition of forsaking someone for more than 3 days for no legitimate reason. Abu Ayyub Ansidi reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "It is not permissible for a Muslim to have estranged relations with his brother beyond 3 nights, the one turning one way and the other turning the other way. When they meet, the better of the two is one who is the first to give a greeting." This hadith has been transmitted on the authority of Sudi with a slight variation of wording, and the words are, the one turning away and the other turning away when they meet, and one avoids the other, and the other also avoids him. Abdullah bin Umar reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "It is not permissible for a Muslim to have estranged relations with his brother beyond 3 days. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "There should be no estranged relations beyond 3 days." Chapter 9. The prohibition of suspicion, spying, competition, artificial inflation of prices, and so on. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Avoid suspicion, for suspicion is the gravest lie in talk, and do not be inquisitive about one another, and do not spy upon one another, and do not feel envy with the other, and nurse no malice, and nurse no aversion and hostility against one another, and be fellow brothers and servants of Allah." Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Don't have estranged relations with the others, and don't nurse enmity, and don't enter into a transaction when the other has already entered, and be fellow brothers and servants of Allah." Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Don't nurse malice against one another, don't nurse aversion against one another, and don't be inquisitive about one another, and don't outbid one another with a view to raising the price, and be fellow brothers and servants of Allah." This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Amas with the same chain of transmitters, and the words are, don't sever relations of kinship, don't bear enmity against one another, don't bear aversion against one another, and don't feel envy against the other, and live as fellow brothers as Allah has commanded you. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Don't bear aversion against one another, and don't be jealous of one another, and be servants of Allah." Chapter 10. The prohibition of wronging, forsaking, or despising a Muslim, and the inviolability of his blood, honor, and wealth. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Don't nurse grudge, and don't bid him out for raising the price, and don't nurse aversion or enmity, and don't enter into a transaction when the others have entered into that transaction, and be as fellow brothers and servants of Allah. A Muslim is the brother of a Muslim. He neither oppresses him, nor humiliates him, nor looks down upon him." The piety is here, and while saying so, he pointed towards his chest thrice. It is a serious evil for a Muslim that he should look down upon his brother Muslim. All things of a Muslim are inviolable for his brother in faith, his blood, his wealth, and his honor. This hadith has been transmitted on the authority of Abu Huraira with some addition, and it is this: "Verily, Allah does not look to your bodies nor to your faces, but He looks to your hearts." And he pointed towards the heart with his fingers. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Verily Allah does not look to your faces and your wealth, but He looks to your heart and to your deeds." Chapter 11. The prohibition of holding grudges. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "The gates of paradise are not opened but on 2 days, Monday and Thursday, and then every servant of Allah is granted pardon who does not associate anything with Allah except the person in whose heart there is a rancor against his brother. And it will be said, look towards both of them until there is reconciliation. Look toward both of them until there is reconciliation. Look towards both of them until there is reconciliation." This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Sahih, who narrated it on the authority of his father, with the chain of transmitters of Malik, but with this variation of wording: "Those would not be granted pardon who boycott each other." Abu Huraira reported it as a marfu hadith, and the words are: "The deeds are presented on every Thursday and Monday, and Allah the Exalted and Glorious grants pardon to every person who does not associate anything with Allah except the person in whose heart there is rancor against his brother. It will be said, put both of them off until they are reconciled." Abu Huraim reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "The deeds of people would be presented every week on 2 days, viz. Monday and Thursday, and every believing servant would be granted pardon except the one in whose heart there is rancor against his brother, and it would be said, he said, leave them and put them off until they are turned to reconciliation." Chapter 12. The virtue of love for the sake of Allah, may He be exalted. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Verily Allah would say on the day of resurrection, where are those who have mutual love for my glory's sake? Today I shall shelter them in my shadow, when there is no other shadow but the shadow of mine." Chapter 13. The virtue of visiting the sick. Abu Rabi reported directly from Allah's Apostle, may peace upon him, as saying, "The one who visits the sick is in fact like one who is in the fruit garden of paradise so long as he does not return." Thalban, the freed slave of Allah's Messenger, reported that Allah's Messenger said, "He who visits the sick continues to remain in the fruit garden of paradise until he returns." Thalban reported Allah's Apostle as saying, "Verily, when a Muslim visits his brother in Islam, he is supposed to remain in the fruit garden of paradise until he returns." Thalban, the freed slave of Allah's Messenger, reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "He who visits the sick is supposed to remain in the fruit garden of paradise." It was said, "Allah's Messenger, what is this Kudfat ul Jannah?" He said, "It is a place abounding in fruits." This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Asim al-Awal, with the same chain of transmitters. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Verily Allah the Exalted and Glorious would say on the day of resurrection, O son of Adam, I was sick, but you did not visit me." He would say, "O my Lord, how could I visit thee, whereas thou art the Lord of the worlds?" Thereupon he would say, "Don't you know that such and such servant of mine was sick, but you did not visit him?" And were you not aware of this, that if you had visited him, you would have found me by him? O son of Adam, I asked food from you, but you did not feed me. He would say, My Lord, how could I feed thee, whereas thou art the Lord of the worlds? He said, Didn't you know that such and such servant of mine asked food from you, but you did not feed him? And were you not aware that if you had fed him, you would have found him by my side? The Lord would again said, O son of Adam, I asked drink from you, but you did not provide me. He would say, My Lord, how could I provide thee, whereas thou art the Lord of the worlds? Thereupon he would say, Such and such a servant of mine asked you for a drink, but you did not provide him. And had you provided him drink, you would have found him near me. Chapter 14. The reward of the believer. For whatever befalls him of sickness, grief and the like, even a thorn that pricks him. Aisha reported, I did not see anyone else being afflicted with more severe illness than Allah's Messenger. In the narration transmitted by Uthman, there is a slight variation of wording. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Amas through other chains of transmitters. Abdullah reported, I visited Allah's Messenger as he was running a high temperature. I touched his body with my hand and said to him, Allah's Messenger, you are running a high temperature. Whereupon Allah's Messenger said, Yes, it is so. I comparatively have a more severe fever than any one of you. I said, Is it because there is a double reward in store for you? Thereupon Allah's Messenger said, Yes, it is so. And Allah's Messenger again said, When a Muslim falls ill, his compensation is that his minor sins are obliterated just as leaves fall in autumn. In the hadith transmitted on the authority of Zubair, there is no mention of these words. I touched his body with my hands. This hadith has been transmitted on the authority of Jarir, and the hadith transmitted on the authority of Abu Muawiyah. There is an addition of these words. He said, Yes, by him in whose hand is my life, there is no Muslim upon the earth. The rest of the hadith is the same. Aswad reported that some young men from the Quraysh visited Aisha as she was in Mina, and they were laughing. She said, What makes you laugh? They said, Such and such person stumbled against the rope of the tent, and he was about to break his neck or lose his eyes. She said, Don't laugh, for I heard Allah's Messenger as saying, If a Muslim runs a thorn or gets into trouble severe than this, there is assured for him a higher rank, and his sins are obliterated. Aisha reported Allah's Messenger as saying, A believer does not receive the trouble of running a thorn or more than that, but Allah elevates him in rank or effaces his sins because of that. Aisha reported Allah's Messenger as saying, A believer does not undergo the trouble of running a thorn or more than that when Allah effaces his sins. Aisha said, No trouble comes to a believer even if it is the pricking of a thorn, that it becomes the means whereby his sins are effaced or his sins are obliterated. Yazid says he does not know which word Urwa said, whether he said kusa or kufira. Aisha reported, I heard Allah's Messenger as saying, There is nothing in the form of trouble that comes to a believer, even if it is the pricking of a thorn, that there is decreed for him by Allah good or his sins are obliterated. Abu Sa'id and Abu Huraira reported that they heard Allah's Messenger as saying, Never a believer is stricken with discomfort, hardship or illness, grief or even with mental worry that his sins are not expiated for him. Abu Huraira reported that when this verse was revealed, whoever does evil will be requited for it, and when this was conveyed to the Muslims, they were greatly perturbed. Thereupon Allah's Messenger said, "Be moderate and stand firm in trouble that falls to the lot of a Muslim, as that is an expiation for him. Even stumbling on the path or the pricking of a thorn are an expiation for him." Muslims said that Umar bin Abd al-Rahman Muhaisin was from amongst the people of Mecca. Jabir bin Abdullah reported that Allah's Messenger visited Saib or Musayyib and said, Saib or Musayyib, why is it that you are shivering? She said, "It is fever, and may it not be blessed by Allah." Whereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "Don't curse fever, for it expiates the sin of the children of Adam, just as furnace removes the alloy of iron." Atta bi Abi Rabi said, Ibn Abbas said to me, "May I show you a woman of paradise?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Here is this dark-complexioned woman. She came to Allah's Apostle and said, I am suffering from falling sickness, and I became naked. Supplicate Allah for me." Whereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "Show endurance as you can do, and there would be paradise for you. And if you desire, I supplicate Allah that He may cure you." She said, "I am prepared to show endurance, but the unbearable trouble is that I become naked, so supplicate Allah that He should not let me become naked." So he supplicated for her. Chapter 15. The Prohibition of Oppression. Abu Dhar reported Allah's Messenger as saying that Allah, the Exalted and Glorious, said, "O my servants, I have forbidden oppression for myself and have made it forbidden amongst you, so do not oppress one another. O my servants, all of you are astray except for those I have guided, so seek guidance of me, and I shall guide you. O my servants, all of you are hungry except for those I have fed, so seek food of me, and I shall feed you. O my servants, all of you are naked except for those I have clothed, so seek clothing of me, and I shall clothe you. O my servants, you sin by night and by day, and I forgive all sins, so seek forgiveness of me, and I shall forgive you. O my servants, you will not attain harming me, so as to harm me, and will not attain benefiting me, so as to benefit me. O my servants, were the first of you and the last of you, the human of you and the jinn of you, to be as pious as the most pious heart of any one man of you, that would not increase my dominion in anything. O my servants, were the first of you and the last of you, the human of you and the jinn of you, to be as wicked as the most wicked heart of any one man of you, that would not decrease my dominion in anything. O my servants, were the first of you and the last of you, the human of you and the jinn of you, to rise up in one place and make a request of me, and were I to give everyone that he requested what he requested, that would not decrease what I have, any more that a needle decreases the sea, if put into it. O my servants, it is but your deeds that I record for you, and then recompense you for. So let him who finds good praise Allah, and let him who finds other than that blame no one but himself. Sahih said that when Abu Idris Kavlini narrated this hadith, he knelt upon his knees. Abu Dar reported Allah's Messenger as saying that he reported it from his Lord, the Exalted and Glorious. Verily, I have made oppression unlawful for me, and for my servants too, so do not commit oppression. The rest of the hadith is the same. Jabir bin Abdullah reported that Allah's Messenger said, "Be on your guard against committing oppression, for oppression is a darkness on the day of resurrection. And be on your guard against stinginess, for stinginess destroyed those who were before you, as it incited them to shed blood and make lawful what was unlawful for them." Ibn Umar reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Oppression is the darkness on the day of resurrection." Salim reported on the authority of his father that Allah's Messenger said, "A Muslim is the brother of a fellow Muslim. He should neither commit oppression upon him nor ruin him, and he who meets the need of a brother, Allah would meet big needs. And he who relieved a Muslim from hardship, Allah would relieve him from the hardships to which he would be put on the day of resurrection. And he who did not expose the follies of a Muslim, Allah would conceal his follies on the day of resurrection." Abu Hurairah reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Do you know who is poor?" They, the companions of the Holy Prophet, said, "A poor man amongst us is one who has neither dirham with him nor wealth." He, the Holy Prophet, said, "The poor of my ummah would be he who would come on the day of resurrection with prayers and fasts and zakat, but he would find himself bankrupt on that day, as he would have exhausted his funds of virtues, since he hurled abuses upon others, brought calumny against others, and unlawfully consumed the wealth of others, and shed the blood of others, and beat others, and his virtues would be credited to be the account of one who suffered at his hand. And if his good deeds fall short to clear the account, then his sins would be entered in his account, and he would be thrown in the hellfire." Abu Hurairah reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "The claimants would get their claims on the day of resurrection, so much so that the hornless sheep would get its claim from the horned sheep." Abu Musa reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Allah the Exalted and Glorious grants respite to the oppressor, but when he lays hand upon him, he does not then let him off." The Holy Prophet then recited this verse, "Such is the chastisement of thy Lord when he chastises the towns inhabited by wrongdoing persons. Surely his punishment is painful, severe." XI 103. Chapter 16. Supporting one's brother whether he is doing wrong or being wronged. Jabir bin Abdullah reported that two young men, one from the Muhajirin immigrants and the other one from the Angr helpers fell into dispute, and the Muhajir called his fellow Muhajirin, and the Ansari, the helper, called the Ansar for help. In the meanwhile, Allah's messenger came there and said, "What is this? The proclamation of the days of Jahiliyyah, ignorance." They said, "Allah's messenger, there is nothing serious." The two young men fell into dispute, and the one struck at the back of the other. Thereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "Well, a person should help his brother, whether he is an oppressor or an oppressed. If he is the oppressor, he should prevent him from doing it, for that is his help. And if he is the oppressed, he should be helped against oppression." Jabir bin Abdullah reported, "We were along with Allah's messenger in an expedition that a person from amongst the emigrants struck at the back of a person from the Ansar. The Ansari said, 'O Ansar,' and the Muhajir said, 'O emigrants.' Thereupon Allah's messenger said, 'What are these proclamations of the days of ignorance?' They said, 'Allah's messenger, a person from the emigrants struck at the back of an Ansari.' Whereupon he said, 'It is something disgusting.' Abdullah bin Ubayd heard it and said, 'They have indeed done it. By Allah, when we would return to Medina, the respectable amongst them, the Ansar, would turn away the emigrants.' Thereupon Umar said, 'Permit me so that I should strike the neck of this hypocrite.' But he, the Holy Prophet, said, 'Leave him, but the people may not say that Muhammad kills his companions.' Jabir bin Abdullah reported that a person from the emigrants struck the back of an Ansari. He came to Allah's Apostle and asked for compensation. Thereupon Allah's Apostle said, 'Leave it, for it is something disgusting.' Ibn Masud said that in the narration transmitted on the authority of Amr, these words are also found. I heard Jabir. Chapter 17. The mutual mercy, compassion and support of the believers. Abu Musa reported Allah's messenger as saying, "A believer is like a brick for another believer, the one supporting the other." Nu'man bin Bashir reported Allah's messenger as saying, "The similitude of believers in regard to mutual love, affection, fellow feeling is that of one body. When any limb of it aches, the whole body aches because of sleeplessness and fever." Nu'man bin Bashir reported a hadith like this from Allah's Apostle. Nu'man bin Bashir reported Allah's messenger as saying, "The believers are like one person. If his head aches, the whole body aches with fever and sleeplessness." Nu'man bin Bashir reported that Muslims are like one body of a person. If the eye is sore, the whole body aches, and if the head aches, the whole body aches. A hadith like this has been narrated on the authority of Nu'man bin Bashir through another chain of transmitters. Chapter 18. The prohibition of reviling. Abu Hurairah reported Allah's messenger as saying, "When two persons indulge in hurling abuses upon one another, it will be the first one who would be the sinner, so long as the oppressed does not transgress the limits." Chapter 19. It is recommended to forgive and be humble. Abu Hurairah reported Allah's messenger as saying, "Charity does not in any way decrease the wealth, and the servant who forgives Allah adds to his respect, and the one who shows humility, Allah elevates him in the estimation of the people." Chapter 20. The prohibition of backbiting. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Do you know what is backbiting?" They, the companions, said, "Allah and His Messenger know best." Thereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "Backbiting implies you're talking about your brother in a manner which he does not like." It was said to him, "What is your opinion about this? That if I actually find that failing in my brother, which I made a mention of," he said, "if that failing is actually found in him, what you assert you in fact backbited him, and if that is not in him, it is a slander." Chapter 21. Glad tidings that whomever Allah conceals in this world, He will conceal him in the hereafter. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Apostle as saying, "The servant whose fault Allah conceals in this world, Allah would also conceal his faults on the day of resurrection." Abu Huraira reported Allah's Apostle as saying, "The servant who conceals the faults of others in this world, Allah would conceal his faults on the day of resurrection." Chapter 22. Being kind to protect oneself from another's vile behavior. Aisha reported that the person sought permission from Allah's Apostle to see him. He said, "Grant him permission," and also added, "He is a bad son of his tribe," or "He is a bad person of his tribe." When he came in, he used kind words for him. Aisha reported that she said, "Allah's Messenger, you said about him what you had to say, and then you treated him with kindness." He said, "Aisha, verily in the eye of Allah, worst amongst the person in rank on the day of resurrection is one whom the people abandon or desert out of the fear of indecency." This hadith has been reported on the authority of Ibn Munkadir with the same chain of transmitters, but with a slight variation of wording. Chapter 23. The virtue of gentleness. Jarir reported from Allah's Messenger, "He who is deprived of tenderly feelings is in fact deprived of good." Jarir reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "He who is deprived of tenderly feelings is in fact deprived of good." Jarir bin Abdullah reported Allah's Apostle as saying, "He who is deprived of tenderly feelings is in fact deprived of good, and he who is deprived of tenderly feelings is in fact deprived of good." Aisha, the wife of Allah's Apostle, reported that Allah's Messenger said, "Aisha, verily Allah is kind, and He loves kindness, and confers upon kindness, which He does not confer upon severity, and does not confer upon anything else besides its kindness." Aisha, the wife of Allah's Apostle, reported Allah's Apostle as saying, "Kindness is not to be found in anything but that it adds to its beauty, and it is not withdrawn from anything but it makes it defective." This hadith has been reported by Miqdam bi Shurai bi Hani with the same chain of transmitters, but with this addition: Aisha mounted upon a wild camel, and she began to make that go round and round. Thereupon Allah's Messenger said, "You should show kindness," and then he made a mention of this hadith. Chapter 24. The prohibition of cursing animals, etc. Imran bin Hussein reported, "We were with Allah's Messenger in some of his journeys, and there was a woman from the Ansar riding a she-camel that it shied, and she invoked curse upon that. Allah's Messenger heard it and said, 'Unload that and set it free, for it is accursed.' Imran said, 'I still perceive that dromedary walking amongst people, and none talking and none taking any notice of that. Imran reported, I perceive as if I am looking towards that dromedary, and in the hadith transmitted on the authority of Taqafi, the words are, unload it and make its back bare, for it is accursed. Abu Bursa al-Aslami reported that a slave girl was riding a dromedary, and there was also the luggage of people upon it. That she suddenly saw Allah's apostle. The way of the mountain was narrow, and she said to that dromedary, go ahead, but that dromedary did not move. She, that slave girl, out of anger, said, O Allah, let that dromedary be damned. Thereupon Allah's apostle said, let the dromedary on which the curse has been invoked not proceed with us. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Sulaiman Taimi, with the same chain of transmitters, but with a variation of words, and that is, by Allah, let that accompany us not which has been damned, or he said like it. Sayyid bi Aslam reported that Abd al-Malik bi Marwan sent some domestic goods for decoration to Darda on his own behalf, and when it was night, Abd al-Malik got up and called for the servant. It seemed as if he, the servant, was late in responding to his call. So he, Abd al-Malik, invoked curse upon him, and when it was morning, Darda said to him, I heard you cursing your servant during the night when you called him. And she said, I heard Abu Darda as saying that Allah's messenger said, the invoker of curse would neither be an intercessor nor witness on the day of resurrection. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Sayyid bi Aslam with the same chain of transmitters. Darda reported on the authority of Abu Darda as saying, I heard Allah's messenger as saying, the invoker of curse would neither be witness nor intercessor on the day of resurrection. Abu Huraira reported it was said to Allah's messenger, invoke curse upon the polytheists, whereupon he said, I have not been sent as the invoker of curse, but I have been sent as mercy. Chapter 25. Whomever is cursed, reviled, or prayed against by the Prophet saw, when he does not deserve that, it will be purification, reward, and mercy for him. Aisha reported that two persons visited Allah's messenger, and both of them talked about a thing of which I am not aware. But that annoyed him, and he invoked curse upon both of them and hurled malediction. And when they went out, I said, Allah's messenger, the good would reach everyone, but it would not reach these two. He said, why so? I said, because you have invoked curse and hurled malediction upon both of them. He said, don't you know that I have made condition with my Lord, saying thus, O Allah, I am a human being, and that for a Muslim upon whom I invoke curse or hurl malediction, make it a source of purity and reward. This hadith has been reported on the authority of Amas with the same chain of transmitters, and the hadith transmitted on the authority of Isa. The words are, he had a private meeting with them and hurled malediction upon them and cursed them and sent them out. Abu Huraira reported Allah's messenger as saying, O Allah, I am a human being, and for any person amongst Muslims upon whom I hurl malediction or invoke curse or give him whipping, make it a source of purity and mercy. Jabir reported Allah's apostle a hadith like it, but with a slight variation of wording. This hadith has been transmitted on the authority of Amas, and in the hadith transmitted on the authority of Isa, the words are, make it a source of reward, and in the hadith transmitted on the authority of Abu Huraira, the words are, make it a source of mercy. Abu Huraira reported Allah's apostle as saying, O Allah, I make a covenant with thee, against which thou wouldst never go. I am a human being, and thus for a Muslim, whom I give any harm, or whom I scold, or upon whom I invoke curse, or whom I beat, make this a source of blessing, purification, and nearness to thee on the day of resurrection. This hadith has been transmitted on the authority of Abu Sinad with a slight variation of wording. A hadith like this has been reported on the authority of Abu Huraira through another chain of transmitters. Salim, the freed slave of Nasriyin, said, I heard Abu Huraira as saying that he heard Allah's messenger as saying, O Allah, Muhammad is a human being. I lose my temper just as human beings lose temper, and I have held a covenant with thee which thou wouldst not break. For a believer whom I give any trouble, or invoke curse or beat, make that an expiation of his sins and a source of his nearness to thee on the day of resurrection. Abu Huraira reported that he heard Allah's messenger as saying, O Allah, for any believing servant whom I curse, make that as a source of nearness to thee on the day of resurrection. Abu Huraira reported Allah's messenger as saying, I have held covenant with thee which thou wouldst not break, so for any believer whom I curse or beat, make that an expiation on the day of resurrection. Jabir bin Abdullah reported Allah's messenger as saying, I am a human being, and I have made this term with my Lord, the exalted and glorious, for any servant amongst Muslims whom I curse or scold, make that a source of purity and reward. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Ibn Jurayj with the same chain of transmitters. Anas bin Malik reported that there was an orphan girl with Sulaym, who was the mother of Anas. Allah's messenger saw that orphan girl and said, Oh, it is you have grown young. May you not advance in years. That slave girl returned to Sulaym weeping. Sulaym said, O daughter, what is the matter with you? She said, Allah's apostle has invoked curse upon me, that I should not grow in age, and thus I would never grow in age. Or she said, in my length of life. Sulaym went out weeping. Sulaym went out wrapping her head dress hurriedly until she met Allah's messenger. He said to her, Sulaym, what is the matter with you? She said, Allah's apostle, you invoke curse upon my orphan girl. He said, Sulaym, what is that? She said, she, the orphan girl, states you have cursed her, saying that she might not grow in age or grow in life. Allah's messenger smiled and then said, Sulaym, don't you know that I have made this term with my Lord? And the term with my Lord is that I said to him, I am a human being, and I am pleased just as a human being is pleased. And I lose temper just as a human being loses temper. So for any person from amongst my ummah whom I curse, and he in no way deserves it, let that, O Lord, he be made a source of purification and purity and nearness to Allah on the day of resurrection. Ibn Abbas reported, I was playing with children that Allah's messenger happened to pass by. us. I hid myself behind the door. He, the prophets, came and patted my shoulders and said, "Go and call Muawiyah." I returned and said, "He is busy in taking food." He again asked me to go and call Muawiyah to him. I went and came back and said that he was busy in taking food. Whereupon he said, "May Allah not fill his belly." Ibn Mutana said, I asked Umayyah what he meant by the word Hatani. He said, "It means he patted my shoulders." This hadith has been transmitted on the authority of Ibn Abbas, with a slight variation of wording. Chapter 26. Criticism of the one who is two-faced, and the prohibition of doing that. Abu Hurairah reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "The worst amongst the people is the double-faced one. He comes to some people with one face, and to others with the other face." Abu Hurairah reported that he heard Allah's Messenger as saying, "The worst amongst people is one with the double face. He comes to some people with one face, and to others with the other face." Abu Hurairah reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "You will find the worst amongst the people, one having double face. He comes to some people with one face, and to the others with the other face." Chapter 27. The prohibition of lying and what is permitted thereof. Humayd bi Abd al-Rahman bi Auf reported that his mother, Kulthum, daughter of Uqba bi Abu Muayt, and she was one amongst the first emigrants who pledged allegiance to Allah's Messenger, as saying that she heard Allah's Messenger as saying, "A liar is not one who tries to bring reconciliation amongst people and speaks good in order to avert dispute, or he conveys good." Ibn Shihab said he did not hear that exemption was granted in anything what the people speak as a lie, but in 3 cases: in battle for bringing reconciliation amongst persons, and the narration of the words of the husband to his wife, and the narration of the words of a wife to her husband in a twisted form in order to bring reconciliation between them. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Ibn Shihab with the same chain of transmitters, but with a slight variation of wording. This hadith has been transmitted on the authority of Suri with a slight variation of wording. Chapter 28. The prohibition of malicious gossip, namima. Abdullah bin Masud reported that Muhammad said, "Should I inform you that slandering, that is in fact a tale carrying which creates dissension amongst people?" And he further said, "The person tells the truth until he is recorded as truthful, and lie tells a lie until lie is recorded as a liar." Chapter 29. The abhorrence of lying and the goodness and virtue of honesty. Abdullah reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Truth leads one to paradise, and virtue leads one to paradise, and the person tells the truth until he is recorded as truthful, and lie leads to obscenity, and obscenity leads to hell, and the person tells a lie until he is recorded as a liar." Abdullah bin Masud reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Telling of truth is a virtue, and virtue leads to paradise, and the servant who endeavors to tell the truth is recorded as truthful, and lie is obscenity, and obscenity leads to hellfire, and the servant who endeavors to tell a lie is recorded as a liar." Ibn Abu Shayba reported this from Allah's Apostle. Abdullah reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "It is obligatory for you to tell the truth, for truth leads to virtue, and virtue leads to paradise, and the man who continues to speak the truth and endeavors to tell the truth is eventually recorded as truthful with Allah, and beware of telling of a lie, for telling of a lie leads to obscenity, and obscenity leads to hellfire, and the person who keeps telling lies and endeavors to tell a lie is recorded as a liar with Allah. This hadith has been reported on the authority of Amos with the same chain of transmitters, and no mention is made in the hadith transmitted on the authority of Isa of these words: he who endeavors to tell the truth and endeavors to tell a lie. And in the hadith transmitted on the authority of Mushid, the words are, until Allah records it. Chapter 30. The virtue of one who controls himself at times of anger, and what takes away anger. Abdullah bin Masud reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "Whom do you count as Raqib amongst you?" They, his companions, said, "One who has no children, the children are born unto him, but they do not survive." Thereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "He is not a Raqib, but Raqib is one who does not find his child as the forerunner in paradise." He then said, "Whom do you count as a wrestler amongst you?" We said, "He who wrestles with persons." He said, "No, it is not he, but one who controls himself when in a fit of rage." This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Amos with the same chain of transmitters. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "The strong man is not one who wrestles well, but the strong man is one who controls himself when he is in a fit of rage." Abu Huraira reported, "I heard Allah's Messenger as saying, one is not strong because of one's wrestling skillfully." They said, "Allah's Messenger, then who is strong?" He said, "He who controls his anger when he is in a fit of rage." This hadith has been reported on the authority of Abu Huraira through another chain of transmitters. Sulaiman bin Surad reported that two persons abused each other in the presence of Allah's Apostle, and the eyes of one of them became red as embers, and the veins of his neck were swollen. Thereupon Allah's Messenger said, "I know of a wording, if he were to utter that, his fit of rage would be no more, and that wording is, I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed." The person said, "Do you find any madness in me?" Ibn Allah said, "Do you see it?" And he made no mention of the person. Sulaiman bin Surad reported that two persons abused each other in the presence of Allah's Apostle, and one of them fell into a rage, and his face became red. Allah's Apostle saw him and said, "I know of a wording, if he were to utter that, he would get out of the fit of anger, and the wording is, I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed." Thereupon a person went to him who had heard that from Allah's Apostle, and said to him, "Do you know what Allah's Messenger said?" He, the Holy Prophet, said, "I know of a wording, if he were to say that, the fit would be no more, and the words are, I seek refuge with Allah from Satan the accursed." And the person said to him, "Do you find me mad?" This hadith has been reported on the authority of Amos with the same chain of transmitters. Chapter 31. Man is created in such a way that he is not steadfast. Anas reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "When Allah fashioned Adam in paradise, he left him as he liked him to leave. Then Iblis roamed round him to see what actually that was, and when he found him hollow from within, he recognized that he had been created with a disposition that he would not have control over himself." A hadith like this has been narrated on the authority of Humayd with the same chain of transmitters. Chapter 32. The prohibition of striking the face. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, when any one of you fights with his brother, he should avoid striking at the face. This hadith has been transmitted on the authority of Abu Sinad, and he said, when one amongst you strikes at the face. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Apostle as saying, when any one of you fights with his brother, he should spare his face. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, when any one of you fights with his brother, he should not slap at the face. This hadith has been transmitted on the authority of Abu Huraira, and in the hadith transmitted on the authority of Ibn Hatim, Allah's Apostle is reported to have said, when any one of you fights with his brother, he should avoid his face, for Allah created Adam in his own image. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, when any one of you fights with his brother, he should avoid the face. Chapter 33. Stern warning to one who torments people unlawfully. Urwa reported on the authority of his father that Hisham bin Hakim bin Hisham happened to pass by some people in Syria who had been made to stand in the sun, and olive oil was being poured upon their heads. He said, what is this? It was said, they are being punished for not paying the kharaj, the government revenue. Thereupon he said, Allah will punish those who torment people in this world without any genuine reason. Hisham reported on the authority of his father that Hisham bin Hakim bin Hisham happened to pass by people, the farmers of Syria, who had been made to stand in the sun. He said, what is the matter with them? They said, they have been detained for jizya. Thereupon Hisham said, I bear testimony to the fact that I heard Allah's Messenger as saying, Allah will torment those who torment people in the world. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Hisham with the same chain of transmitters, and he made this addition of Jarir, that Hisham bin Hakim went to Umayr bin Sa'd, who was then ruler in Palestine, and he narrated to him this hadith, and he submitting before the words of the Prophet, commanded that they should be let off, and so they were let off. Urwa bin Zubair reported that Hisham bin Hakim found a person, the ruler of Hims, who had been detaining some Nabateans in connection with the dues of jizya. He said, what is this? I heard Allah's Messenger as saying, Allah will torment those persons who torment people in the world. Chapter 34. Telling the one who carries a weapon in the Masjid, marketplace or other place where people gather, to hold it by its point. Ahmed heard Jabir as saying, a person happened to come to the mosque with an arrow. Thereupon Allah's Messenger said to him, take hold of its pointed head. Jabir bin Abdullah reported that a person happened to come to the mosque with arrows, and their iron ends were exposed, so he was commanded that he should grasp the pointed heads so that these might not do any harm to a Muslim. Jabir reported that Allah's Messenger commanded a person who had been distributing arrows freely in the mosque that he should not move about in the mosque but by catching hold of their iron heads. Ibn Rum narrated this with a slight variation of wording. Abd Musa reported that Allah's Messenger said, when any one of you happens to go to a meeting or the bazaar with an arrow in his hand, he must grasp its pointed head. Then he again said, he must grasp its pointed head. Abu Musa said, by Allah, we did not court death until some of us had flung arrows upon the faces of one another. Abu Musa reported Allah's apostle as saying, "He who amongst you moves in the mosque or in the bazaar, and there is an arrow with him, he should take hold of its iron head in his palm, so that none amongst the Muslims should receive any injury from it, or he said, should catch its iron head." Chapter 35. The prohibition of pointing at a Muslim with a weapon. Abu Huraira reported, Abul Qasim, the kunya of Allah's Messenger, may peace be upon him, said, "He who pointed a weapon towards his brother, the angels invoke curse upon him, even if he is his real brother, so long as he does not abandon it, the pointing of weapon towards one's brother Muslim." Abu Huraira reported a hadith like this from Allah's Apostle through another chain of transmitters. Abu Huraira reported a hadith from Allah's Messenger. One of them was this, that Allah's Messenger said, "None amongst you should point a weapon towards his brother, for he does not know that Satan might cause the weapon to slip from his hand, and he may injure anyone, and thus he may fall into hellfire." Chapter 36. The virtue of removing a harmful thing from the road. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "While a person was going along the path, he found a thorny branch upon it. He pushed it to a side, and Allah approved this action of his, and as a mark of appreciation granted him pardon." Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "A person while walking along the path saw the branches of a tree lying there. He said, 'By Allah, I shall remove this from this so that these may not do harm to the Muslims,' and he was admitted to paradise." Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying that he saw a person enjoying himself in paradise because of the tree that he cut from the path, which was a source of inconvenience to the people. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying that there was a tree which caused inconvenience to the Muslims. A person came there and cut that tree, and thus entered paradise. Abu Barza reported, "I said, Allah's Messenger, teach me something, so that I may derive benefit from it. He said, remove the troublesome thing from the paths of the Muslims." Abu Barza reported that he said to Allah's Messenger, "Allah's Messenger, I do not know whether I would survive after you, so confer upon me something by which Allah should benefit me." Thereupon Allah's Messenger said, "Do this and that, and remove the troublesome things from the paths." Chapter 37. The prohibition of tormenting cats and other animals that are not harmful. Abdullah reported that Allah's Messenger said, "A woman was tormented because of a cat which she had confined until it died, and she had to get into hell. She did not allow it either to eat or drink, as it was confined, nor did she free it so that it might eat the vermin of the earth." This hadith has been reported on the authority of Ibn Umar through another chain of transmitters, and Ibn Umar reported Allah's Messenger as saying, "A woman was tormented because of a cat which she had tied, and thus allowed it neither to eat or drink, nor set it free so that it might eat the vermin of the earth." This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Abu Huraira through another chain of transmitters. Abu Huraira reported from Allah's Messenger A hadith out of which one was this, that Allah's Messenger said, a woman got into hellfire because of a cat whom she had tied, and thus it could not eat, and she did not let it free, so that it could devour the vermin of the earth until it died. Chapter 38. The prohibition of arrogance. Abu Sa'id Khudri and Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, Allah the Exalted and Glorious said, Glory is His lower garment and majesty is His cloak. And Allah says, He who contends with me in regard to them, I shall torment him. Chapter 39. The prohibition of making others despair of the mercy of Allah. Jundub reported that Allah's Messenger stated that a person said, Allah would not forgive such and such person. Thereupon Allah the Exalted and Glorious said, Who is he who adjures about me that I would not grant pardon to so and so? I have granted pardon to so and so, and blotted out his deeds, who took an oath that I would not grant pardon to him. Chapter 40. The virtue of the weak and downtrodden. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger, may peace be upon him, as saying, Many a person with disheveled hair and covered with dust is turned away from the doors, whereas he is held in such a high esteem by Allah, that if he were to adjure in the name of Allah about anything, Allah would fulfill that. Chapter 41. The prohibition of saying, the people are doomed. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, when a person says that people are ruined, he is himself ruined. Abu Ishaq said, I do not know whether he said Allah kahum or Allah kuhum. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Sahih with the same chain of transmitters. Chapter 42. Advice to treat one's neighbor well. Aisha reported Allah's Messenger as saying, Gabriel impressed upon me kind treatment towards the neighbor, so much that I thought as if he would confer upon him the right of inheritance. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Aisha through another chain of transmitters. Ibn Umar reported Allah's Messenger as saying, Gabriel impressed upon me the kind treatment towards the neighbor, so much that I thought as if he would soon confer upon him the right of inheritance. Abu Dar reported Allah's Messenger as saying, Abu Dar, when you prepare the broth, add water to that and give that as a present to your neighbor. Abu Dar reported Allah's Messenger commanded me thus, whenever you prepare a broth, add water to it, and have in your mind the members of the household of your neighbors, and then give them out of this with courtesy. Chapter 43. It is recommended to show a cheerful countenance when meeting others. Abu Dar reported, Allah's Apostle said to me, don't consider anything insignificant out of good things, even if it is that you meet your brother with a cheerful countenance. Chapter 44. It is recommended to intercede with regard to that which is not unlawful. Abu Musa reported that when any needy person came to Allah's Messenger with a need, he commanded him to his companions, saying, make a recommendation for him, and you would get the reward. Allah, however, gives the verdict through the tongue of His Apostle, what He likes most. Chapter 45. It is recommended to keep company with righteous people and avoid bad company. Abu Musa reported Allah's Messenger as saying, the similitude of good company and that of bad company is that of the owner of musk, and of the one ironsmith blowing bellows, and the owner of musk would either offer you free of charge, or you would buy it from him, or you would smell its pleasant odor. And so far as one who blows the bellows is concerned, he would either burn your clothes, or you shall have to smell its repugnant smell. Chapter 46. The virtue of treating daughters well. Aisha, the wife of Allah's apostle, said, "A woman came to me along with her 2 daughters. She asked me for charity, but she found nothing with me except 1 date. So I gave her that. She accepted it and then divided it between her 2 daughters and herself, ate nothing out of that. She then got up and went out, and so did her 2 daughters. In the meanwhile, Allah's apostle visited me, and I narrated to him her story. Thereupon Allah's apostle said, he who is involved in the responsibility of bringing up daughters, and he accords benevolent treatment towards them, there would be protection for him against hellfire." Aisha reported, "A poor woman came to me along with her daughters. I gave her 3 dates. She gave a date to each of them, and then she took up 1 date and brought that to her mouth in order to eat that. But her daughters expressed desire to eat it. She then divided the dates that she intended to eat between them. This kind treatment of her impressed me, and I mentioned that which she did to Allah's messenger. Thereupon he said, verily Allah has assured paradise for her because of this act of her, or he has rescued her from hellfire." Malik reported Allah's messenger as saying, "He who brought up 2 girls properly till they grew up, he and I would come together very closely on the day of resurrection," and he interlaced his fingers for explaining the point of nearness between him and that person. Chapter 47. The virtue of one whose child dies and he seeks reward. Abu Huraira reported Allah's apostle as saying, "Anyone amongst the Muslims, free of whose children die, and he resigns himself calmly to the will of God, fire will not touch him, but for the fulfillment of the oath." This hadith has been reported by Sudi on the authority of Malik, and in the hadith transmitted on the authority of Sufyan the words are, "He would enter into fire except for the fulfillment of the oath." Abu Huraira reported that Allah's messenger said to a woman of the Ansar, "In case anyone amongst you sees the sad demise of 3 children of hers, and she resigns herself to the will of God, hoping to get reward, she would be admitted to paradise." A woman from amongst them said, "Allah's messenger, even if the children who die are 2, thereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, even if they are 2. Abu Sa'id Khudri reported that a woman came to Allah's messenger and said, "Allah's messenger, men receive your instructions. Kindly allocate at your convenience a day for us also, on which we would come to you, and you would teach us what Allah has taught you." He said, "You assemble on such and such a day." They assembled, and Allah's messenger came to them and taught them what Allah had taught him, and he then said, "No woman amongst you who sends her 3 children as her forerunners and in the hereafter, but they would serve him as a protection against hellfire." A woman said, "What about 2 and 2 and 2? Thereupon Allah's messenger said, "Even if they are 2 and 2 and 2. Abu Huraira reported that he, the Holy Prophet, said, "Free children who die in childhood." Abu Hassan reported, "I said to Abu Huraira that my 2 children had died. Would you narrate to me anything from Allah's Messenger, a hadith which would suit our hearts in our bereavements?" He said, "Yes, small children are the fowls of paradise. If one of them meets his father, or he said, his parents, he will take hold of his cloth, or he said, with his hand, as I take hold of the hem of your cloth with my hand, and he, the child, would not take off his hand from it until Allah causes his father to enter paradise." This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Tamim with the same chain of transmitters, and he is reported to have said, "Did you hear from Allah's Messenger anything which may suit our heart in our bereavements?" He said, "Yes." Abu Huraira reported that a woman came to Allah's Apostle with her child and said, "Allah's Apostle, invoke Allah's blessing upon him, for I have already buried 3. He said, "You have buried 3? She said, "Yes." Thereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "You have indeed safeguarded yourself against the torment of hell with a strong safeguard." Umar has made a mention of his father, whereas others have not made a mention of his father. Abu Huraira reported that a woman came to Allah's Apostle with their child and said, "Allah's Messenger, he is ailing, and I am afraid that he may die, as I have already buried 3. Thereupon he said, their sad demise would be a protection against hellfire for you. Sahih has not mentioned the kunya of Abu Giyat, he has mentioned his name. Chapter 48. When Allah loves a person, he commands Jibreel to love him, and he loves him, and the people of heaven love him. Then he finds acceptance on earth. Abu Huraira reported that Allah's Messenger said, "When Allah loves a servant, he calls Gabriel and says, 'Verily, I so and so, you should also love him.' And then Gabriel begins to love him. Then he makes an announcement in the heaven saying, 'Allah loves so and so, and you also love him.' And then the inhabitants of the heaven, the angels, also began to love him. And then there is conferred honor upon him in the earth. And when Allah is angry with any servant, he calls Gabriel and says, 'I am angry with such and such, and you also become angry with him.' And then Gabriel also becomes angry, and then makes an announcement amongst the inhabitants of heaven, 'Verily, Allah is angry with so and so, so you also become angry with him,' and thus they also become angry with him. Then he becomes the object of wrath on the earth also." This hadith has been reported on the authority of Sahih with the same chain of transmitters, except with this variation, that in the hadith transmitted on the authority of Ali bin Musayyib, there is no mention of the word anger. Suhail bin Abi Salih reported, "We were in Arafah that there happened to pass Umar bin Abd al-Aziz, and he was the Amir of Hajj. People stood up in order to catch a glimpse of him. I said to my father, 'Father, I think that Allah loves Umar bin Abd al-Aziz.' He said, 'How is it?' I said, 'It is because of the love in people's heart for him.' Thereupon he said, 'By one who created your father.' I heard Abu Huraira narrating from Allah's Messenger a hadith like one transmitted on the authority of Suhail. Chapter 49. Souls are like conscripted soldiers. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger saying, Souls are troops collected together, and those who familiarized with each other in the heaven from where these come would have affinity with one another in the world, and those amongst them who opposed each other in the heaven would also be divergent in the world. Abu Huraira narrated directly from Allah's Messenger that he said, "People are like mines of gold and silver. Those who were excellent in Jahiliyyah during the days of ignorance are excellent in Islam when they have an understanding and the souls are troops collected together, and those who had a mutual familiarity amongst themselves in the store of prenatal existence would have affinity amongst them in this world also, and those who opposed one of them would be at variance with one another." Chapter 50. A man will be with those whom he loves. Anas bin Malik reported that a desert Arab said to Allah's Messenger, "When would be the last hour?" Allah's Messenger said, "What preparation have you made for that?" Thereupon he said, "The love of Allah and of His Messenger, that is my preparation for the last hour, for the day of resurrection." Thereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, You would be along with one whom you love." Anas reported that a person said to Allah's Messenger, "When would be the last hour?" He, the Holy Prophet, said, "What preparation have you made for that?" And he gave no details, but said, "I love Allah and His Messenger." Thereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "You would be along with one whom you love." Anas bin Malik reported through another chain of transmitters that a desert Arab came to Allah's Messenger, may peace be upon him. The rest of the hadith is the same, but with this variation that he said, "I have not made much preparations which merit appreciation for myself." Anas bin Malik reported that a person came to Allah's Messenger and said to Allah's Messenger, "When would be the last hour?" Thereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "What preparation have you made for the last hour?" He said, "The love of Allah and of His Messenger is my only preparation." Thereupon he, the Holy Prophet, said, "You will be along with one whom you love." Anas said, "Nothing pleased us more after accepting Islam than the words of Allah's Apostle, 'You will be along with one whom you love.'" And Anas said, "I love Allah and His Messenger, and Abu Bakr and Umar, and I hope that I would be along with them, although I have not acted like them." Anas bin Malik reported Allah's Apostle this hadith through another chain of transmitters, but he did not make mention of the words of Anas, "I love," and what follows subsequently. Anas bin Malik reported, Allah's Messenger and I were coming out of the mosque, that we met a person on the threshold of the mosque, and he said to Allah's Messenger, "When would be the last hour?" Allah's Messenger said, "What preparation have you made for that?" The man became silent and then said, "Allah's Messenger, I have made no significant preparation with prayer and fasting and charity, but I, however, love Allah and His Messenger." Thereupon the Holy Prophet said, "You will be along with one whom you love." This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Anas through another chain of transmitters. This hadith has been reported on the authority of Anas with different chains of transmitters. Abdullah reported that a person came to Allah's Messenger and said to Allah's Messenger, What is your opinion about the person who loves the people, but his acts or deeds are not identical to theirs? Thereupon Allah's Messenger said, a person would be along with one whom he loves. A hadith like this has been transmitted on the authority of Abdullah. Abu Musa reported that a person came to Allah's Messenger. The rest of the hadith is the same. Chapter 51. If a righteous man is praised, it is glad tidings for him and will not harm him. Abu Dar reported, it was said to Allah's Messenger, what is your opinion about the person who has done good deeds and the people praise him? He said, it is glad tidings for a believer which he has received in this mortal world. This hadith has been narrated through another chain of transmitters also, and the one transmitted on the authority of Shuba, the words are, people love him. In the hadith transmitted on the authority of Abd Us Samad, the words are, people praise him, as stated by Hamad. Chapter 12. The virtue of love for the sake of Allah, may he be exalted. Chapter 12. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Apostle as saying, a person visited his brother in another town, and Allah deputed an angel to wait for him on his way, and when he came to him, he said, where do you intend to go? He said, I intend to go to my brother in this town. He said, have you done any favor to him, the repayment of which you intend to get? He said, no, expecting this, that I love for the sake of Allah, the exalted and glorious. Thereupon he said, I am a messenger to you from Allah, to inform you that Allah loves you as you love him for his sake. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Hamid B. Salama, with the same chain, with the same of transmitters. Chapter 13. The virtue of visiting the sick. Chapter 14. The reward of the believer for whatever befalls him of sickness, grief and the like, even of thorn that pricks him. The above hadith has been transmitted by Hisham with the same chain. Aisha reported, Allah's Messenger said, there is no trouble that comes to a believer except that it obliterates from his sins, even if it is the pricking of a thorn. Chapter 15. The prohibition of oppression. The hadith is narrated through Abu Mishir from Sa'id bin Abdil Aziz, except that the previous hadith through Marwan was the more complete of the two. This hadith is also transmitted through Ibn Bashir and Muhammad bin Muhammad through Abu Mashud through the same chain narrated to its full extent. Chapter 16. Supporting one's brother whether he is doing wrong or being wronged. Chapter 17. The mutual mercy, compassion and support of the believers. Chapter 18. The prohibition of reviling. Chapter 19. It is recommended to forgive and be humble. Chapter 20. The prohibition of backbiting. Chapter 21. Glad tidings that whomever Allah conceals in this world, he will conceal him in the hereafter. Chapter 22. Being kind to protect oneself from another's vile behavior. Chapter 23. The virtue of gentleness. Chapter 24. The prohibition of cursing animals, etc. Abu Huraira reported Allah's Messenger as saying, it does not seem proper for a Siddiq that he should be an invoker of curse. This hadith has been narrated on the authority of Abu Kurayb with the same chain of transmitters. Chapter 25. Whomever is cursed, reviled or prayed against by the Prophet saw when he does not deserve that, it will be purification, reward and mercy for him. Chapter 26. Criticism of the one who is two-faced and the prohibition of doing that. Chapter 27. The prohibition of lying and what is permitted thereof. Chapter 28. The prohibition of malicious gossip, namima. Chapter 29. The abhorrence of lying and the goodness and virtue of honesty. Chapter 30. The virtue of one who controls himself at times of anger and what takes away anger. Chapter 31. Man is created in such a way that he is not steadfast. Chapter 32. The prohibition of striking the face. Chapter 33. Stern warning to one who torments people unlawfully. Chapter 34. Telling the one who carries a weapon in the masjid, marketplace or other place where people gather, to hold it by its point. Chapter 35. The prohibition of pointing at a Muslim with a weapon. Chapter 36. The virtue of removing a harmful thing from the road. Chapter 37. The prohibition of tormenting cats and other animals that are not harmful. The above hadith is narrated through another chain of transmitters with the same meaning. Chapter 38. The prohibition of arrogance. Chapter 39. The prohibition of making others despair of the mercy of Allah. Chapter 40. The virtue of the weak and downtrodden. Chapter 41. The prohibition of saying the people are doomed. Chapter 42. Advice to treat one's neighbor well. Chapter 43. It is recommended to show a cheerful countenance when meeting others. Chapter 44. It is recommended to intercede with regard to that which is not unlawful. Chapter 45. It is recommended to keep company with righteous people and avoid bad company. Chapter 46. The virtue of treating daughters well. Chapter 47. The virtue of one whose child dies and he seeks reward. Chapter 48. When Allah loves a person, He commands Jibril to love him, and he loves him, and the people of heaven love him. Then he finds acceptance on earth. Chapter 49. Souls are like conscripted soldiers. Chapter 50. A man will be with those whom he loves. Chapter 51. If a righteous man is praised, it is glad tidings for him and will not harm him.